Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Conspiracy Truth Finders with Bob Kiviat. Well, this was a very, very busy week. I don't know if anyone saw it or everyone saw it. I've realized from people calling me that a lot of people saw it. On Saturday Night Live, just the other day, they opened up their show with a crawl, basically. And that was the introduction to their cold open. And their cold open basically was introducing the idea that Americans had just witnessed battling town hall meetings between Donald Trump and Joe Biden that amazingly were running on different networks at the exact same time. And they made the very clear reference that Joe Biden's was like a Hallmark movie, but Donald Trump's was like an alien autopsy. I'm going to show you the open now. Take a look at what Saturday Night Live did.
On Thursday, Vice President Biden held a town hall as scheduled on ABC. At the same time, NBC laid a thirst trap for President Trump. One town hall was a thoughtful, cogent discussion of the issues facing our country. The other featured President Trump. We now present a rebroadcast of those town halls the way most Americans watch them, flipping back and forth, trying to decide between a Hallmark movie and an alien autopsy. This is Dueling Town Halls. Yeehaw!
Now, of course, I was flattered to some degree. The reference, I think, and we can all interpret it, was that Donald Trump, not only his entire campaign, but it all got crystallized into this wild, almost crazy discussion that he had with Samantha Guthrie, basically bringing up QAnon, what we had mentioned earlier 2 shows ago, that QAnon is becoming so ingrained into the Republican Party and into what Donald Trump is all about, that when you looked at the entire affair, the entire town hall meeting, you realize it was insane. There was a woman behind Donald Trump wearing a red mask. She was nodding at everything he said. They did an entire spoof on that. They were basically showing how crazy and wild and almost unpredictable and maybe even not real that whole thing was. Well, alien autopsy was real. As we showed last episode, it was probably one of the most talked about documentaries ever on television, which I'm very proud of. And today we have on the show one of the key researchers from day one on that story, Philip Mantle from England. And he's a great author, he's a researcher, and we're going to be seeing him in a minute. But I want to make sure everyone understands that Alien Autopsy was a documentary about a film or video that appeared out of nowhere. And it was at a time when the X-Files was very popular. Now, I want to show everybody something, though, about QAnon. QAnon is getting so popular that, according to polls, and I'm going to show the poll right now, 50% of Trump voters allegedly believe in this QAnon conspiracy. It's a little complicated. We'll leave it up for a second or so, whatever. But I want people to understand something. It's not true. QAnon is a combination of a lot of different conspiracy theories rolled together. I want to go on record before we bring Philip in here, and I want to say this for everyone. We are not amplifying this conspiracy theory by doing a report again mentioning it. We're trying to do what we call debunk it. There's a change in our culture for some reason, and Philip and I are going to talk about this, where debunking is somehow not in vogue for some reason. You need to separate fact from fiction. You can't have it be lingering in that middle area, and that's the problem. With Alien Autopsy, as you'll find out today from the story with Philip, the behind-the-scenes story of how we exposed it and the meaning of the exposing and what exposing it really means for society, and how we have to really take hoaxes down. We can't leave frauds and hoaxes lingering in our ethers. We need to remove that. And if our journalists of the world are afraid to take on these stories because it may backfire on them, they may be associated with the content, that's in many ways an abdication of their responsibilities. And I mean that sincerely. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Philip Mantle, my old friend and compatriot in this wacky world of debunking conspiracy theories and other things that aren't true. Philip, good to see you.
Yeah, good evening, Bob. Nice to talk to you.
So what did you make of this? What is your make right off the top of 25 years later? We just passed the 25th, and I know I feel like I'm getting old. 25th, I feel good though. 25th anniversary of the famous Alien Autopsy on the Fox network. By the way, Alien Autopsy, fact or fiction, exclamation point. I always laughed, Philip, when people would leave the exclamation point, even in documents from the Fox network or Trimark or Vidmark Pictures or any of the deals I cut, I'd see that occasionally and go, it's a question mark.
Yeah.
We didn't know. Philip, what do you make of the fact it's still popular enough that they'd reference it on Saturday Night Live like that?
Well, it doesn't surprise me in the least, Bob. I mean, your show is still on Amazon. And believe it or not, this year I finally got to watch the extended version that they made as well. So it took me 25 years to see that, Bob, but I've finally done it.
Well,
but, you know, I'm never surprised where the Alien Autopsy references are going to turn up, because it turns up in the most unlikely of places. You've just shown one this evening, you know, and we could list the places where it's shown up before: Seinfeld, The Simpsons, The X-Files. You can buy toys and board games of it. It's in Japan, it's in China. It's even here in the UK. A couple of years back, there used to be a little museum, a UFO museum, in a back street in a seaside town called Blackpool, but it had closed. And I went to see the owner. I'd known him down the years, and lo and behold, what did he have on display? The Alien Autopsy. You know what he also did, Bob, which was interesting. He got the creature up off the slab, made another one, and put a spacesuit on it. So he even had the creature from the Alien Autopsy in a spacesuit, what he thought it would look like. So it does return. It turns up in the most unlikely of places, and I think it always will do. You're never going to get rid of it.
You know, I was very flattered today. Timing is an interesting thing. I got a phone call from a writer in New York, from a major magazine in New York, who's writing a book about the emergence of reality TV in America. And she felt that my shows with the Fox network, and with especially the Fox executive Mike Darnell, who became like the guru of reality TV after my shows and a few others put him on the map, they recognized the impact that the show had, and then led to other documentaries. But my feeling is other reality type shows came in, ironically, like The Apprentice with Donald Trump, which not only gave Donald Trump a platform to look like he was a great boss, but not to get political too much today, but growing up in New York, I know from all the press I read since I was a young kid, what kind of a non-businessman Donald Trump really was. More of a showman, and then NBC put him on, and the rest is history. A lot of people look at Donald Trump as a reality show, like our president is a reality show. What do you think about that, Philip, knowing how involved you were in the early reality show of Alien Autopsy?
Well, like we said off air, when people complain about reality shows, it's your fault now, Bob. We know who to blame. You can't hide anymore. But it is true. You sowed the seed, and it grew in all different directions.
Yeah.
And of course, you end up with a reality TV star as your president. I mean, that could only happen in America. And the thing is, I think people have forgotten to tell Donald Trump that he's not play acting as the apprentice. He is, in fact, the real president. I think somebody forgot to tell him that, Bob.
I was chilled to the bone, by the way, because we're going to get into some of these prophecies of the Bible and stuff like that and how it relates to this in the series. But I was very taken aback by this comment from the former Secretary of Defense, who was under Trump, who said that during that North Korean period with Trump, he was really worried we were going to have a nuclear war. He was so worried, the Secretary of Defense, that he said he went and prayed in church. Now, that's how close we came to a nuclear conflagration with North Korea, even though we were hearing about, how friendly they were and they were sharing love notes and whatever. The real truth is we could have been looking at Armageddon. And I think people that vote for their president, and the only comment I'm going to make before we get into the rest of everything we're doing today, Philip, is I really want to go on record for the show and for me that we are not giving any substantiation to QAnon. In fact, we're the opposite. We're doing everything we can to debunk it, not unlike we did with the alien autopsy. Philip, why don't you tell us real briefly, the alien autopsy was a big hit on Fox. We then did 2 other update specials, but then there was a period of time that we didn't have many clues about where the big brightly lit scene was really from. Was there really a cameraman? I know you and I were talking. I kept in touch with you. ABC claimed and Barbara Walters claimed they had maybe debunked the alien autopsy. They promoted that a few years later. They didn't have anything. They had zero. They had nothing really at all. And it was a big promotional nothing. Fox Network and I were a little concerned. They said to me, what do you want to do? I said, we need to do a show. So the beginnings of world's greatest hoaxes, secrets finally revealed, was germinated. The beginnings were started. When we were beginning that whole process, you were doing some research. Before you give me the answer of how you did that, let me show everyone the beginning, the open of world's greatest hoaxes on Fox, so you can see what my comments are. The narrator, Lance Henriksen, a lot of people will recognize the voice, but I wrote these words to give the warning to America of what happens if you don't debunk hoaxes and you let them run wild. Take a look at the beginning of the show.
And conjecture. Viewers should explore all sources of information before reaching their own conclusions.
This is an example frame of a man pulling off a hoax.
This looks like a man's gait and a man's walk.
It's outrageous. I believed it.
This animal is supposed to be over 30 tons. It doesn't even make a ripple in the water.
What is that?
It's kind of a crude attempt at a special effect.
Billy Meyer is one of the world's greatest hoaxers. Billy Meyer films will all be done to draw people into this mindset of a cult.
As I observe these people, they're clearly not medically trained people. I believe they're actors.
I became the second Doctor. There you can see for yourselves. I have been revealed. The rumour is that the more elaborate footage came from Germany. That is one of the greatest hoaxes of the 20th century.
Ever since the infamous War of the Worlds radio hoax of 1938, people have come to recognize the danger posed by such fantastic and staged events passed off as real. But now, hoaxed photos and videos supposedly showing actual monsters, sea serpents, and aliens are being presented in record numbers, forcing believers and skeptics alike to work overtime to separate fact from fiction. Tonight, you will see the most sensational and ambitious hoaxes ever shot on film or video, and hear from inside informants as they tell how and why they know. These are all frauds. Stay with us as we investigate world's greatest hoaxes. Secrets finally revealed.
Okay, so you got a feeling there, I think, for the kinds of problems that can come up if you let things run wild like this. So we, Philip and I, in many ways, teamed up. Philip, lead us into what happened. I was looking for evidence of where that big, brightly lit scene where the doctors are cutting open the creature. But what a lot of people don't know is there were 3 films, a package of films or videos that constituted the alien autopsy package. One of the films was the bright scene that we know. The 2 other scenes, though, called the tent footage and the metal debris that maybe was collected at the site at Roswell, they were separate films. So tell us what happened, Philip, when you were trying to focus on the one that we could see called the tent footage.
Yeah, I mean, the tent footage, Bob, was the first piece of film that Santilli showed to anyone. That includes myself, the late Reg Presley, Colin Andrews, and so on. And what he claimed was that this was the creature, the alien, in a field tent being examined by medical professionals before it was shipped off to wherever for a proper examination, a proper autopsy, for want of a better phrase. And he actually gave, when I first saw it in Santilli's office back in 1995, he gave me a copy of it. I still have it here on VHS. I don't have a machine to play it on anymore, but I still have it. So, you know, what I aimed to do, Bob, was in public, I supported Ray, said I believed him, but behind the scenes, I was just trying to find out what was going on. And I got an email from a chap called Keith. And he said, I know something about the alien autopsy film. And eventually he gave me his telephone number. So I rang Keith, and his name was Keith Goodyear. And he worked in animation. And he said he went to get a job, I think, to get some work from a studio in Milton Keynes here in the UK. And this place he went to was called AK Music. I think they did a lot of animation, a lot of karaoke videos, all kinds of stuff. And while he sat there, you know, in their offices, the phone rings. And another gentleman, the guy who owned this place, and another chap called Keith, this time Keith Bateman, he answered the phone and he's chatting away. And the first Keith could hear who he's talking to. So he put the phone down and then he said, was that Ray Santilli? And he says, yeah. He said, Ray Santilli of the alien autopsy film. And Keith Bateman started laughing and he said, yeah, but he said, we actually made it. Now, he wasn't referring to the very bright scene. He was referring to the tent footage. And Keith went on to tell him the story of how they made it. So I eventually found Keith Bateman. And it took me a while to persuade him to talk, but he did. And he's gone on the record several times since then, Bob. What he told us was that in 1983, 84, can't remember the exact date, they used to work with Ray Santilli, not for him, but they used to work together on projects. And they used to have like little brainstorming sessions. Sometimes it was just a bit of tomfoolery, you know, just laughing and joking. One day, Ray said, out of the blue, wouldn't it be great if we had some Roswell footage? Just so happens one of Keith's employees, a chap by the name of Philip Yarman, was reading a UFO book which had info in it about Roswell. So Keith thought to himself, and off he went. He went to a farm of a friend of his in Bedfordshire, and he made a polystyrene head. Got a head of, you know, you put your wig on, and he made the black eyes, put the sheet on the bench. Actually, underneath the sheet, you see a shape of a body. That's Keith's 10-year-old son lying still.
Hold on, Philip. We are going to show the big reveal in a minute from World's Greatest Hoaxes, where your Elliot Willis discovery comes into it. So we're going to show that. We're going to hear our narrator describe some of the footage. But I know Elliot Willis is the guy that we were able to get to come on camera and reveal. So just tell us who Elliot Willis was and how you got to that point, because he's the guy we're about to see.
Yeah, Elliot was one of the employees at AK Music, and he was drafted in to play the part of the Doctor. And he was as bemused, I think, as anyone was what was going off. And the guy standing next to him is the local butcher. That's why you see some fleshy material. It came from the local butcher. And you also see a man walk with his back to the camera every now and again. That's the farm. That's the farmer. And
he's supposed to be Harry Truman.
Yeah, but it's the farmer.
President walking around, but in reality, it was the owner of the farm. Philip, I don't mean to cut you off because I'm trying to stop a spoiler alert from happening, because the show is the World's Greatest Hoaxes show, which you helped us create this reveal, this amazing discovery. What happened was, in the film, you may notice when we played the open, people watching now may remember when we just played that opening, you saw this guy saying, I've been revealed. I've been revealed. How he was revealed is very interesting. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but let's play the clip now from World's Greatest Hoaxes that shows the reveal of Elliot Willis and how this whole thing broke down and how we're able to break this case once and for all and lead us to the ending. If we can play that now, it'd be great.
I purchased a polystyrene wig head. I then thinned down the face with a file and the nose to make it more gaunt looking, and applied a thin layer of latex to simulate skin texture.
Willis says that while he was initially stumped as to how to fabricate the eyes for the creature being autopsied in the tent footage, his mother came up with a simple yet effective solution.
My mum stepped in and said, hey, why don't you get an orange segment? I said, that's like an orange segment? What are you talking about? She's like, well, just listen to me. If you cut it into 4 and then you bend it, you then get that ellipse shape. So I did that, cut it to size, then tacked it in with small dressmaking pins, then covered it in black gloss paint. One of the directors, Andy, knew someone who had a farm, who had a really dark, kind of dingy kind of back room that we could use.
We asked Willis to explain how the footage was hoaxed.
It was not a mask. It was placed where his head should have been, and then the sheets were brought up to cover it.
Willis identified the actor on the left side of the screen as a local butcher named Ian.
There's a white sheet over the body, and they're tearing it with a plastic bag. We're putting out sheep intestines and guts and bits, stuff like that. We're cutting out with scalpels and stuff.
According to Willis, the figure moving in the front left corner of the frame is supposed to be a nervous American president who flew to the scene. In reality, the actor is the man who owned the barn where the footage was staged.
All right. So Philip, that kind of pays off your story a little, but also we left out a part, which is no problem. The part that we left out is how we were able to get this reveal. There was a very, very important moment where a NASA scientist that I got to know very well over the years, I consider him like my father of image processing teacher. He taught me how to look at this stuff, all UFO issues. He is the father of image processing at NASA. He's an older guy now for sure. His name is Dr. Robert Nathan, and he's probably the only NASA scientist to ever take UFOs and aliens seriously, as far as I can tell. And he was able to enhance a very darkly lit frame from that film and reveal Elliot Willis's features, that very prominent nose, the very prominent angular face. So we knew once we had him. My producer on this was a great guy named Eddie Rowetter. Eddie Rowetter is a very, very accomplished producer now in his own right, but he was an up-and-coming guy, I almost say kid, when I brought him in for World's Greatest Hoaxes. I'll never forget, Philip, Eddie goes to pick up Elliot at the airport. He has the picture that we enhanced at NASA. He calls me and says, Bob, it's him, as if we had finally revealed that this was shot in 1994, not 1947, but it wasn't the brightly lit scene. but it was good enough to begin the kind of like breadcrumb, kind of gumshoe, I should say, detective work. So Philip, tell us what happened. So we revealed Elliot Willis. We said in World's Greatest Hoaxes that maybe someday, I was paraphrasing my own writing here, maybe someday, Lance Henrik says, the other filmmaker who made the bright lit scene will be revealed, and he will have, again, taken advantage of us. So that's part one of the reveal.
Well, I think we should say what happened to the tent footage, Bob.
Please tell us.
Yeah, but once Keith Bateman had made it, remember he shot it originally in color, changed it to black and white, put scratches on it, and so on and so on. He then took that on video to Ray Santilli and said, "Have a look at that." Ray said, "That's not good enough. That's too poor quality. Go away and get me a quote for something much better, much clearer." So he did. Keith did. He phoned, one of the film studios we have in the UK. I'm not going to say which, and he got a quote, and he took it back to Santilli, and he said, "That's too much. Forget it." However, he hung on to the tent footage. So, the fuse was lit, Bob, from there on in.
Yeah.
And away we went. So we as far as, getting to the bottom of what this film was, we got our foot in the door, so to speak. And it was only a question of keeping your foot there and slowly but surely getting yourself in there to get to the rest of the information. But that's where it all began. And I believe I hadn't long received this information when out of the blue, I had a phone call from one of your colleagues who was working with you. He just set about this, and he'd no idea that this was available. I said, "Oh, well, that's just a coincidence. Here you go." The, tent footage, AK music, and I left him to it. And you made the documentary yourself.
Yep. But an interesting thing happens after that, Philip. So we did our show on Fox. We felt at the Fox network, we were done with it. We didn't think we needed, in a courtroom kind of thinking, we didn't need to go to any other level. We had shown that one of the three films clearly were fake. And when I say one of the three, if you looked at the Fox contract we had with this individual who claimed he got the film from a military cameraman in the US from the Army years ago, if you look at the story, the way it went, we believed that person Santilli. So we said, okay, every single, because he signed on the dotted line to get paid for the footage, he had to represent and warrant a legal term that he believed to his, no matter what anyone ever says, that this is a 17-minute autopsy, 2 minutes of a tent scene leading into the alien autopsy story, and then the metal debris. So the story he was trying to tell is, I got three films. First, the alien being recovered at the Roswell crash scene. A makeshift tent was erected. Harry Truman, in a dark, jacket, comes in, and they then move that alien to Fort Worth, Texas, where they're going to analyze it even more. And then the metal debris was supposedly what they recovered at the crash scene. You can't separate the three films. They were presented to me and the Fox network. And by the way, 5 other networks had the same meeting. So 5 other network executives witnessed the same other, and I mean groups of executives. So for Santilli, the guy behind the film, to ever claim the 3 aren't connected was ridiculous. They were in a contract stamped as the same package of film. So after we did our Fox show, World's Greatest Hoaxes, I said to Philip, as you know, Philip, keep me posted. Let me know if you hear anything, and then tell us the rest. So we waited. I was busy developing other shows, and you had a breakthrough. Tell us how you were able to lead us to the rest of it.
What I tried to do, Bob, all along was to keep the alien autopsy film in the public eye. I believed right from day one that if we did that, sooner or later we'd get a break. It just took a lot longer than I expected. But we stepped forward in time a year or two. I don't know how many years it was. But again, another email.
It was two and a half years. 2.5 years.
Yeah. And this time it's a chap called Simon. And he's asking if there's any interest in the Alien Autopsy film. The reason he asked is because I'd just written an article for Graham Birdsall's UFO magazine, which was a newsstand publication at that time. And Graham had put it on the front cover, and Simon had seen it. So I said, well, probably yes. Why do you ask? He said, well, my friend made the dummies. Well, that certainly got my attention, you know. So people might recognize by my accent, I live in the north of England. So I spoke to Simon, and he asked if we could meet in Manchester, which is only about 50 miles from here. He even chose the venue. It was a certain cafe we had to meet at. And when you got there, Bob, it was one of these cafes that was all glass. So there was no solid walls. It was just a glass box you sat in.
I love the intrigue. I love what you're telling me intrigue here, Philip. It's great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, but what he didn't know, we already had someone in there keeping an eye on things, and even I couldn't find him. But that's a different story. So I met Simon. He was a nice enough guy, and he said that his friend had made the dummies and was looking for a TV deal, basically just to spill the beans. And did I know anyone? And the only person I could think of, Bob, of course, was yourself. Because it just seemed a natural anyway.
It's interesting because when I contacted this individual's representative, the person that Simon was pointing to, this business manager was very, very coy about this. He said, we're going to go public. We want guarantees. I had to sign a document that said that if I ever let his name come out by accident or any of my own dissemination, talking to executives, I could be sued for a lot of money. So they were trying to get me to almost guarantee in blood almost that if he told me verse and chapter on the story, I would keep it silent. So I did. The individual that we're talking about,
yes, you did. Yeah.
The guy we're talking about that Philip connected me to is a guy named John Humphreys.
Well, you never told us the name, Bob, and I think that's credit to your professionalism.
Well, I wanted to, and I went to meetings.
No, but Simon left us a little hint. I don't know if it was on purpose or it accidentally slipped out. Here on Channel 4 in the 1980s, it's a very popular show called Max Headroom.
I know. And
this Max Headroom was a puppet, dummy head and shoulders. And guess who made it?
Great lead in, because not only did I know about Max Headroom, because in New York, I was developing something years ago called the Quantelgraphic Paint Box. And the Quantelgraphic Paint Box became a real digital tool for the advertising industry, I'm proud to say. But that actually was the forerunning machine, something called the Quantel Paint Box, that made Max Headroom into this character that you could almost see as a video creature. So John Humphrey is a special effects guy that Philip led me to. And as you know, Philip was a top guy making kind of models and molds and living bodies that could almost look like living bodies or deceased bodies. He was a sculptor, basically, a sculptor, right, Philip?
Yeah, he was trained at the Royal Academy, Bob.
Right.
And that's not an easy thing to get through, you know? No. So he was a highly skilled sculptor. And of course, we'd been running around looking for special effects people, but he wasn't necessarily a special effects person. His work overlapped into the special effects field.
Right.
When you go on his website, he will tell you he is a sculptor first and foremost. And of course, he divulged certain information to yourself.
Well, yeah. And in fact, it was a very bumpy road. And I want everybody to understand in this show today we're doing, these frauds separating fact from fiction, fake news from real news, sometimes takes a year, 2 years, 3 years. I guarantee everybody watching today that years from now, you'll be hearing some of these claims Donald Trump made debunked completely, but it will take time. And unfortunately, sometimes there isn't time because in this case, we have an election coming up. And I'll have to say this for the record, for everyone, so people get to know my feelings. The regular conventional news media blew it. I had presented a news story to a friend of mine in New York at one of the news organizations on QAnon, pointing out the danger almost 2 years ago. Where were they? You could see that it was going to grow into this Donald Trump Republican Party, and it was going to be all these accusations. And now we have a nightmare. We're not going to be able to solve this till way after the election. But in the meantime, the comparison here, as Saturday Night Live did, they see a connection between the alien autopsy and Donald Trump's nonsense. And that is absolutely an important point to bring out today. Here we are 2 weeks away from our election, Philip. The leader of the free world, who that's going to be, is on the line. And they're making a connection to alien autopsy, which I find very flattering because we did unravel it. Oh, it took a while, and I'm sure that was their point. Saturday Night Live's point was, oh my God, when's this going to end? It's like the alien autopsy. But I got to tell you, I'm proud of that. But I want to make sure everybody's clear. It created a cottage industry of aliens caught on camera, and it grew. And something happened in 2011 that we're going to show today, Philip, that might be the next alien autopsy-like film that needs to be debunked because it's such a wild thing. It may involve the Russians. It's being presented as a Russian, possibly KGB film. No one really knows. So, Philip, before we get into the entire Skinny Bob alien story, where again, there are 4 videos that were released on YouTube in succession in 2011, which freaked out me. I was working with a very great guy, John Brenkus, on a show called Fact or Faked for Sci-Fi Channel. We were looking at this video. Nobody knew what to make of it. It looked like an old film. The problem was we couldn't get the person that released it. It was released under a name on YouTube called Ivan 0135. That's all we knew. Ivan 0135 on YouTube. It's still up there now. He's got 4 videos up there. They show a story, and we'll go through that now. But Philip, did you hear anything about Skinny Bob back in 2011? It's like the next alien caught on film kind of story. What did you make of it yourself when you heard about it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Skinny Bob was the next generation of alien autopsy films, as far as I was concerned. And as you've said there, Bob, it did set in motion a cottage industry, one that is still going, I might add. It's not stopped. So you got everybody and his dog, you know, trying to make their own. But some were just laughable. They were meant for a bit of fun. You know, others were a little bit more sophisticated. And then you have the Skinny Bob one. There's a backstory to go with it, you know, but nonetheless, it's the latest version.
Well, let's get into it because I got to be honest with you. Someone has come forward to me and told me he is the guy behind the film. His name is Randy T. Randy T. I can't give you his last name. I'm going to be fair. So far, Randy T has not been willing to come on. I tried my best to get him on, not only here, but a full-fledged documentary on the Skinny Bob. It clearly could be enough. There's enough material there for a full documentary. The person named Randall T has a story to tell that is like a Donald Trump crazy, wacky story. Okay, if I really tell you the story, I'll get people clicking off this thing like, forget it. Okay, but I'm not saying it isn't an interesting. It's an interesting story for sure, but I'm not going to like dilute our coverage today with a Randy story and how he claims to be Ivan 0135, or alternatively, how Ivan 0135 uploaded his video that he was involved in shooting. It gets crazy. However, let's get into the Skinny Bob story. Skinny Bob has 4 scenes. The first scene is the UFO alien, whatever ship coming in with Skinny Bob and other aliens before they crash land. You'll see it right now. They crash land. Now, I'm not going to say the video is real, but I'm going to say it's real interesting. And just when you want to debunk it, we'll talk about it, Philip. Maybe you'll debunk it with me right now. Scene 1, part 1 of the Skinny Bob story. And here you can see the UFO. It's there. You hear the sound of the projector in the background. They're showing it on a wall. Apparently, this is a ship coming in to wherever it landed. Now, that's an interesting angle. Who's shooting that and where's that coming from? The next thing you know, we've got some kind of activity on the ground and just some kind of a ship there. And then we got some creatures laying there. So the idea is playing out a similar story. The story is it's the 1960s. This is later on, the 60s, not 1947. And this is some kind of a rendezvous. The story is that the military had made contact somehow, either before or after the crash, and they interacted with the survivors of this crash, Skinny Bob being one of them. Now, we're going to show you right now the Skinny Bob main film, which shows the creature. There is absolutely no easy way. I don't care what anyone in the film business says to me. There is no easy way, Philip, to explain how this creature was filmed. Is it an animation? Is it a dummy? When you see the detail of the blinking eyes and all that going on, there'll be a lot to talk about. So this is now scene 2 or tape 2 of the alien known as Skinny Bob surviving this. They apparently gave him some clothes or something he maybe wasn't wearing initially, and they're kind of interrogating him. So this is the full little film. It's only, it's short, but I want people to see how it was presented. Again, there's a Russian insignia on the initial video, so we're not quite sure what to make of that, but let's see what this is now, the full Skinny Bob, moment here of the alien himself. And you can read it through. Everybody can see what it's saying. Again, who knows what to make of it? Who knows if it's not a lark by the Russians? And again, the idea of Russian involvement in our own social media. Remember, it was posted on YouTube. Ivan 0135. Ivan, that's a Russian name. Check it out. And he's clearly blinking. I mean, he's clearly moving, blinking, the opposite of the alien autopsy, Philip. It's a full live creature. Now, I don't know about the ending of that. That's a very weird ending to the film. But we're going to go back and see the sequence now of the eyes. And Courtney, if you could help us there, make sure we get the shot of just the moment the alien comes in. And just replay that again so people can really see the eyes, and focus on the eyes, everyone. The eyes themselves, the blinking eyes, and the area above the eyes. Check out the skin around the eyes. Better television, the better here. And the way the eyes seem to be naturally stretching, the skin around the eyes. A lot of people feel it's very hard to imagine, even here too. Check out the eyes again. We've analyzed this pretty heavily, Philip. This isn't a hell of a job if it's fake. And I know because of the black and white nature and all that, it's easy to write it off. But remember, if it's the 60s, who knows? So what's your reaction, Philip, before I tell everyone what the alleged story is between the aliens and the humans and the treaty they may have formed and the rest of the videos? Because don't forget now, there are still 2 more videos to see. And the last one's a classic. Philip, what do you think so far?
I still think it has all the hallmarks of the alien autopsy film, because it's telling you there, these are only segments of a much longer film. I don't know, what did he say, 180 minutes of film, like Santilli did. Oh, these are only the bits and pieces.
Yep.
So that rang. And also, rather than look at the eyes, because that's the obvious thing to look at. It's a bit like a magician, put something in your face, but really you ought to be looking over here. And when you see that clip, you see it's in profile. It puts his hand up towards its head, and it looks like it's got a normal size arm. But when then you see it standing up straight, it hasn't. Its arms are extremely long. Not only that, I mean, I'm sure there's people out there like you and me, Bob, remember the cartoon Popeye.
Yeah, sure.
Well, Popeye had these huge, great muscular forearms. Well, it's not quite Popeye-ish, but it does have larger forearms than it does its upper biceps. Which
Philip,
I find,
do you see how beautifully you're explaining this to everybody today? Without knowing who's behind it, without knowing the provenance, as we call it, all we can do is dig into these little details, which will make people pore over this footage for another 25 years.
Yeah, and of course, it's got a big head compared to the rest of its body, Bob, but yet it seems to lean forward without any problem.
See, I love the way he's analyzing it, because that's, Philip, that's the way you are bringing people into our world of how you analyze these things, but you have to have some knowledge of the terrain we're in, the genre that you're in, to be able to tell these stories properly. And I think that's where the news media needs to really kind of ratchet up their game, because this is the new world we're in. We're in the conspiracy world.
Well, if you think back to the alien autopsy, Bob, Santilli promised all of us some actual physical 16 millimeter film to analyze, and it never turned up. So all we were left with was what we see on video. So you had to speak to the special effects gentlemen, you had to speak to the medical experts, even museums, with that clock on the wall of the right era, the medical instruments, were they right? The debris film had got symbols on it. I sent photographs of those symbols, Bob, to the British Museum and other establishments and saying, have you got any idea what these things are? So we could only go what we had to deal with visually. We didn't have any film to put under the microscope, which is rather ironic, Bob, because I did line up Kodak to examine Santilli's film, and Kodak here in England are in Hertfordshire, which is only a short drive from where Ray lives. He could have hand delivered them in 20 minutes, Bob.
But Philip, what we know now, and for sure, all he did, Santilli, as amazing fake as it was, he took the roll of film that he had, 16 millimeter film. He might have got from this whatever guy, will leave him out now, the other compatriot in their hoax, and basically attach a piece of 16 millimeter film from the 1940s on another roll, and Kodak was hoodwinked completely.
Yeah.
Kodak was hoodwinked. We didn't know it till later, the more we dug into it. So going back to the comparison with Alien Autopsy and Skinny Bob, here is why don't we just go to the fourth one? We don't need to see the document package. The document package, now I've been reminded, is kind of like, it's a joke. We can't really judge the documents. We have no way of knowing they're on video. The final scene of the Skinny Bob video is called, according to Ivan 135, it is literally the family vacation, meaning the alien family has somehow survived the crash, if you can buy this line, and they're literally walking around. Now, Philip, they're walking around, so they're clearly either actors in, suits, maybe young kids, but check out the way they look. It's just a little bizarre. So we're going to look at this final film right now, if we can, and let's talk about it, of the Skinny Bob package. All the writing is good to see. I want people to see exactly how it's delivered. Because again, forensically, it's all we've got. Until Randy came forward, which we'll talk about Randy in a minute. Again, I want everyone to realize right now this is coming allegedly from a Russian source, according to the beginning of the first reel and other parts of the package. And maybe we have the film. This might be the one leading into this. I'll have to see what we're doing. But I want everyone to see what we've got, because let's face it, if you don't see it, you don't know what we're talking about. Here we go. Family vacation. They're walking around. Now look, they look kind of spindly. I mean, you telling me those are kids? Now, if we is there any way, if we can repeat the last part again? Great. If not, I think we got the point. But Philip, they look like little creatures, little gray creatures. Here we go. I mean, in many ways, it goes beyond the alien autopsy in its kind of arrogance, in its hey, look what we've got. Now, Philip, the story is these creatures were filmed surreptitiously by the military. The deal was, according to the Ivan 135 and this Randy who came forward, these creatures were faked out by the military. They were told, there won't be any cameras, don't worry when we meet up with you. But apparently one of the military operatives had some kind of a hidden camera in 1960, whatever, and they were able to film these creatures. Philip, what do you make of that final scene of
it's the alien autopsy all over again with a bit extra, because one of the criticisms of the alien autopsy film was, of course, when it goes out of focus. So here we've got the family out in the vacation, and it's all out of focus, and it's not out of focus by chance, Bob. It's out of focus on purpose, because you can't make out any detail, and I might seem somewhat cynical, but that's the way it is. I'm afraid it's done on purpose, as it was in the alien autopsy film. It didn't go out of focus by accident. It was done on purpose. So you've taken it to the next level here. You've got, I don't know, 3 or 4 creatures supposedly walking around, and it's all out of focus.
I didn't complete the Randy story. So the Randy story is simple. Randy came to me through one way or another and admitted that he was the guy who the government had put through an MK Ultra experiment, apparently giving him some kind of drugs, and take him to a facility and let him see the creatures and let him see the filming and all of that. Not only that, Randall claims he's been involved in many things, like Forrest Gump. You ever see the movie Forrest Gump? Forrest Gump is everywhere in famous history moments. This guy Randall claims he was at the Reagan assassination. See, conspiracy, that's always like the Kennedy assassination. The Reagan assassination attempt, and he was the guy on the ground holding the nuclear football on the ground. Now, in an upcoming episode, we're going to show Philip Randall's claim that he's the same guy that's on the ground looking up at all the action, holding the nuclear football. And what's interesting is, according to his little video package he put together, which is available on the internet, we'll talk about, he literally puts his face next to the guy on the ground at the Reagan assassination attempt, and literally it looks like the same guy. Unfortunately, I have not analyzed that forensically enough. Whoever Randall is, I want him on. He's got a lot to say. He even has connections to QAnon in some strange way, many, many years before there ever was a QAnon. So, Philip, what do you make of a guy claiming to be a government test subject who was brought to a facility under some level of drugs? He was given this idea that he'd be the one to, record this and keep it to himself. Later on, he somehow got copies of the filmings, and released it in 2011. And he's afraid to go public, but he might still. What do you make of it? I know where he is, by the way. I know his phone number. I know where he can be found. If worse comes to worse, we'll approach him a little more aggressive.
Well, it's just another fantastic story, isn't it, Bob? And again, the cynical side of me coming out, but it's a great story, but it's one that, you know, has no provenance, no substance to it, no proof to go with it. It's just a great story. You know, we like stories, don't we? They make us smile. We enjoy them, but that's as far as they go.
Well, hold on, though. Yeah, but you can't, not to cut you off, Philip, but you can't let it run wild like we've seen with our former president, maybe soon to be former president. I don't know. I'm not that political, really. But something tells me conspiracy theory will be an explosion subject if this guy gets reelected. So, I mean, theoretically, if he gets reelected, this show's got a lot of work to do. Maybe even after the election, regardless of who wins, we've got a lot of work to do, Philip. So tell us, what's upcoming for you now before we wrap it up today? What's your next forays? Tell us a little bit about your projects. What are you working on?
Yeah, well, of course, it was the 25th anniversary of the Alien Autopsy film. So I published a revised edition of my book, Roswell Alien Autopsy. And I mean, a lot of the early work was done in paperwork because there was no internet. So it allowed me the opportunity to fully show, you know, faxes and letters, transcripts, photographs, documents. I mean, you name it, it's all in there. So I put that out. So it tells the story right from day one, right through to where we are today, literally. And if anybody's interested in the Alien Autopsy film, I am biased, but that's the book for you to read. But the last couple of years, I've been involved with a close encounter witness in Mississippi.
Oh, wait, hold on, Philip. As an American kid, don't mean to cut you off, but I get excited. No. You know I do. Philip is working on a movie about.
Well, I'm not working on it. I'm just helping.
Now, hold on. Philip is very, very modest. Okay, Philip is leading the charge, if you will, by giving credibility. I believe this as a reporter. He's giving credibility to a movie that should have been made many, many years ago. It is probably the most famous UFO case ever presented on American network television before the Alien Autopsy. It was 3 networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, back when I was a kid in the 70s. This was a breaking story. 2 guys on, this is where we get this strange, dismissive UFO related comment people make. 2 guys on a pier, drinking or not drinking in Mississippi, had a UFO encounter and were abducted by these aliens. They were on the news. There was all kinds of polygraphs involved. This is not a joke. It's a very serious case. And finally, Philip is helping this movie be made. Calvin Parker is one of the chaps, as Philip would say years ago, that was abducted. Philip, give us a short little review of what the story of the Mississippi event was. Anyone can go learn about it afterwards. Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, they went fishing that night on the river. It's not an out-of-the-way place, Bob. It's right by the Highway 90. They hadn't been fishing that long when there were some blue lights appeared behind them. Calvin thought it was the police. He thought they were going to get arrested for trespassing and spend the night in jail, So they turned around, and of course it wasn't the police. There was this object descending. They were scared out of the wits. Calvin's first reaction was to run, but there was nowhere to go. A door opened. This light came out. It dazzled them. These 3 strange beings floated, and I mean floated across the ground towards them. They didn't walk. 2 grabbed Charles Hickson. 1 got Calvin. I'm cutting a lot out here, Bob, but they were taken on board. They saw things. They were put back. And within no time, they were in the sheriff's office recounting it all.
That's key. Remember, Philip?
Yeah.
You said it all right there. They were in the sheriff's office talking to the sheriff. Do you think these 2 guys want to be talking to a sheriff about something? They'll throw you in the clinker. And it was
the good thing was as well, Bob, it was recorded. Amazing. And they put them in a room and didn't know there was a tape recorder playing. And the sheriff thought, we'll get them now. They went and retrieved the tape, played it, and nothing had changed. They're still talking about what had happened to him, how they're going to react when they get home. Calvin was praying at one point. It had disturbed him that much. So they went home. The police said, we won't tell anybody. But hey, presto, they go to work the next morning, and they're besieged by I mean literally besieged by the media. So they're dismissed. Get the hell out of here. The following day, none other than Dr. Alan Hynek turns up, and Dr. James Harder.
See, this is where, the Denzians, the people that really understand conspiracy theory and UFO research and all of that. J. Allen Hynek was the guy who the government wanted to run Project Blue Book, to put all these cases into the annals of, hoax or explainable or whatever. And J. Allen Hynek literally came to the conclusion he maybe believed these guys, right?
He did. He held a press conference before he went and said these gentlemen should be treated with respect. They've gone through a very traumatic experience.
And by the way, Philip, we're going to be doing another, we'll be digging into the UFO stuff a lot, as my background probably shows we should, and yours too, by the way, Philip. But we're going to be having James Fox, the maker of the new movie that just came out called The Phenomenon, which really is an encyclopedic, complete coverage in a hour and a half or a little longer than that. So it's not boring. And it's literally got all the goods people need to know. And we're going to be talking about James' work, the documentary, Trump apparently noticing it being focused on Fox News a couple of weeks ago. We'll be getting into all that a lot more detail when James Fox comes on. But thank you for telling us about the Calvin Parker story, because I'm going to ask James how much he looked into that for his movie. But more than anything, Philip, I really want you to tell us down the road, come back on the show and tell us about the movie's update. I know you're not making the movie, but you're definitely behind the scenes and you know what's going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, the screenplay is complete, Bob. And I've had the pleasure and honor of reading it. And it is a fantastic story, because it not only deals with the close encounter aspect, but it deals with the human side of it, how this affected Calvin, how it affected his wife, his family and friends, which is an area that's largely ignored. And so it tells the whole story from day one. And just a little joking aside, Calvin actually didn't live in Pascagoula. He lived 200 miles away. He went there for a regular job because he just got engaged to get married. So I was speaking to him just literally the other night and was said, well, you do realize his wife, Waynette, it's your fault, because had you not been getting married, he wouldn't have gone there in the first place.
Let's make sure everyone understands this. To repeat, Philip is involved in helping to develop a movie that is about the most talked about UFO related news event that I ever witnessed.
Yes.
In my young childhood here in America. Anybody in the, who was growing up in the 70s, they know about this story. Now, Calvin Parker's alive, his partner's not, but I hope we do see this movie, Philip, and anything I can do to help, we will definitely be talking. But that really wraps us for today, Philip. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And as we get more into these stories, I hope you'll come back. And it's a pleasure to bring you on because of our association. I really appreciate it a lot.
No, my pleasure, Bob. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that's it for today on Conspiracy Truth Finders. We'll see you soon.